Hey friends, I'm so glad to see you again, and I'm so glad you're here. So I have something really fun today that I want to teach you, and there's a little story behind it. So let me tell you. I've been having such a blast over on TikTok for about the past year, honestly. And yesterday I posted a really quick instructional on how to paint this flower. Super cute, right? People went crazy and they really enjoyed it. So I thought, how fun would it be to come on over here on YouTube and post a longer instructional video? And so that's what I'm doing today. You don't need much in terms of materials. As you know, I like to keep things simple. And I just want you to have fun with it. Don't be stressed, don't be worried. Literally, I'm using 2 brushes. I'm using 1 palette. You can pull out your Crayolas. You don't have to use the exact palette I'm using. And I'm using Stonehenge watercolor paper, the cold press variety, but any watercolor paper will do. We are gonna have so much fun. All right, you wanna paint with me? Let's go. So here is a look at the supplies I'll be using. My favorite Art for Joy's Sake dagger brush. And of course the liner brush, that's a #1 liner brush, and my handmade palette that you can see there in the bottom right hand of the screen. And let's take a look again at the piece that I created for TikTok. That's what we're gonna be recreating with a little more detail today. It's gonna be so much fun. I'm so glad you're here with me, and don't be nervous. This is not difficult. This is not as complicated as it might look. And we are gonna start painting petals with water. Now my water isn't perfectly clean, but I'm just kind of painting in kind of lazy teardrop shapes. I'll give you a better look there with water. And it's pretty clean, but there's still some pigment on there, so you can kind of see what you're doing. I'm doing 5 petals, again with just clean water. See, there's even a little bit of that blue there that popped in. Now I'm grabbing my favorite color from this palette, You Do You, and I'm dabbing, dab, dab, dab. The petals that I painted in water are still wet. So all I have to do is a light touch to spread that color around. Let it do its thing for a little bit. Go in then with a brush full of clean water. Make sure it's clean this time. Dab and smooth, dab and smooth. This is where you're refining the shapes of your petals. So if you don't like what those petals look like when you first painted them, you can change the shape up a little bit, refill your brush, add a couple extra little flourishes, but it's very light pressure, dabbing and swirling, grabbing extra water on your brush when you need it. That is the basic technique. See there, I just added a little more water because I wanted things to start moving around even more. Everything is still very wet right now. I'm dragging with the tip of my dagger brush towards the center of the flower to create an interesting center. And don't worry, I will paint that yellow eventually. Now, I always say when the page is wet, it's an opportunity. So grab a second favorite color. I'm kind of using like a terracotta tone, and dab, dab, dab right around that center, right around. And again, rinse, add clean water to the brush, and push. I call this flooding, where I take a clean brush full of water and I kind of push water towards a color. All right, you can add in even more color. I'm taking that first pink that I used to create these petals, and with the very tip of my brush, dabbing in really saturated drops of that color. There you go, using the very tip of the dagger brush. This is why I love the dagger brush. It's so versatile. You've got the tip, you've got the side, the 2 sides, the short and the long. It's incredible. Don't feel like you have to move around all the color you lay down. See how I'm just kind of letting this color spread and do its thing? I'm not really pushing it around right now. I'm not doing the flooding. Remember that. Let's try some leaves. I'm going to grab my favorite green. Tip of the brush facing down on the page. Press, drag, lift. Repeat, press, drag, lift. And again, fill in a bit and you have a leaf. That's it. I could paint leaves all day long. Press, drag, lift. You decide where you want your leaves to go. At this point, you could be adding additional color, some yellows, some of that muddy color that collects in the crevice of your palette. Press, drag, and lift. You can start away from the flower and drag down. You can start at the where the petals converge and drag out, but it's press, drag and lift. And depending on how long you drag, how much you press, how much pressure that is, the shape of your leaf is going to change. I loaded up my brush with 2 colors there, a muddy color and a green, to get that kind of instant shadow. And so if you're thinking, oh, it looks like you're creating one leaf with like 2 brush strokes that are mirrored side by side, you would be exactly correct. That's exactly what I'm doing. And that's it. Like I said, I could spend days painting leaves. I swear, it's so fun and so satisfying. Here comes the yellow. Simple, simple. Just add in with the tip of your brush. I'm trying not to touch the pink parts that are still wet, but if I do have a little run-in with pink, it's okay. It's just gonna make for some interesting watercolor explosions. Now to the fun stuff. Grab that liner brush, load it up. You might have to practice a little with exactly how much pigment, how much water. It's kind of a 50-50, and just drag very light pressure along the silhouette of each petal. Drag. You don't want these to be straight lines. They don't all have to go the entire length of the petal. They should swirl out, curve out, just like that petal does. Think about a topo map. So like a topographical map with all of those lines that kind of trace the contours of the land. That's what you're doing. You're tracing the contours of the flower petal. Pick up more color if you want more intensity in between where those 2 petals meet. That's a great way to add depth and dimension. And I'm just gonna keep going here. You don't always have to place these linear details, this line work as I call it, in the same spots. I'm doing a little bit on the outer edge of the petal here and a little bit at the center as well. Mix it up a little bit because God didn't make each petal look exactly the same. That's why we call it nature. That's why we call it organic, because every petal in nature looks a little different, feels a little different. So if you want your paintings to feel more effortless, more natural, more flowing, then make sure you're mixing things up. Make sure you're not adding the same type of lines everywhere. And I am going into the crevices of this flower. That's a horrible word, but it's a good word to describe it. Where the 2 petals meet, I'm going in with that darker pink and adding little notches, like little oddly shaped triangles, if you will, to create dimension, to show where one petal lays on top of another. I'm gonna grab a little more green and a little bit of that purple. And that is my color that I've mixed up for the line work on the leaves. Same technique. Follow the contour of the leaf shape. Think about how the veins of a leaf appear. They follow the curve of the petal and they converge. Now this can take some practice. You probably at the beginning of trying this are gonna make thicker lines like I just did. It's okay though. This is a great thing to practice before you go onto your quote final painting. It's a great thing to do on a little bit of scrap paper and see how you feel with that liner brush. Now let me let you in on a little secret. You don't need a liner brush to complete this painting. You could use your dagger brush or anything with a point the entire way through. It's just a little easier with a liner brush. If you just have the dagger or you just have a round brush that comes to a point, just try to use very, very, very light pressure and you're gonna get some pretty decently thin lines out of any old brush. I'm just adding some more contour with that liner brush. Now, well, I don't really like what I did there. I'll show you how I'm gonna fix that. Yeah, that's not working either. I'm gonna show you, you can take your dagger brush. Here's the thing, again, when the page is wet or damp, you have an opportunity. I'm going over this leaf. I don't like how the line work turned out, and I'm using some water, and everything is blending now. And I'm just blending it out, making a slightly larger leaf. I'm not panicking because everything's wet. When everything's wet, you have a lot of flexibility and you can really make things happen and change things and quote, fix things. When your painting is wet, it's a wonderful time. Now for some simple details, some tendrils, some swirls. This is what brings the painting to life. These organic swirly-doo, curly-cues, I don't know what you want to call them, but they are magic. I love them so much. Ah, look at that. Gorgeous. Now you put these where you want them to go. Now for compositional sake, you're probably thinking, well, Kristy, how do you decide? How do you decide where to put them? I like to think in usually 3 areas, 4 areas, 5 areas. Now here I broke my own rule because I did 4, but it worked because some of, like in the upper right-hand corner, things were a little heavier. I added more wispies. Some of the other areas I didn't add as many. And of course, let's turn them into little vines with little tiny baby leaves that are so adorable. You're just doing kind of a press and lift real quick. Press, lift, press, lift, press, lift, and let those leaves get smaller as you go out towards the tip. Boom. Now I'm deciding, yep, I'm put it right there. Press, lift. It's almost like you're doing a little bounce. Your brush is bouncing off the page really quickly. Look at that. So beautiful. You did it. You did it. All right, I'm taking that muddy color that collects in the crevices of my palette. There's that word again. Sorry, guys. And let's show you a better angle of this. Using that liner brush again, I'm just adding little scratchy marks to define the center of this flower. I'm gonna get some more color on my brush and continue to define. We're coming on the end. This is the finish line. This is where things get really interesting and really exciting. You can notch out some little areas there in between the petals and just watch this come alive. This is the point where you're breathing, you're happy, you're saying to yourself, I can't believe I did this. I made this beauty. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And it wasn't that hard, was it? All right, I'm gonna continue add little touches of that muddy color. And remember, the muddy color, now I have a color called muddy. I designed it and I made it and I mull it myself, it's handmade, but you can grab color from the crevices of your palette and it's gonna come close to that muddy color. So don't worry about having the exact color that I have. I'm adding a little green at the center. I added a little too much. So with a dry brush, I'm just gonna lift out a little bit of that color and then figure out how I wanna add color back in if I do, and just define that center shape. It almost looks like a really misshapen starfish. Oh. You love this. I hope you love this. I hope you try this. If you're sitting here right now and you've painted this with me, bravo. I'm so proud of you. I'm adding in a couple little more details. If you haven't yet and you're watching this, I'm speaking to you right now. I feel you. I know what you're saying to yourself. This looks so fun, but I can't do this. I'm not qualified. I want you to stop right there. You are qualified. This isn't brain surgery. This isn't this isn't life or death. This is a watercolor painting. And all you have to lose is a sheet of watercolor paper. I love this. I love painting with you. I love this flower. I love how it makes me feel. It feels effortless. And I really hope you do take a moment to show yourself that you can paint this. I know you can. I know you can make art for joy's sake and invite joy into your life, and I am here for it. Please head into comments, ask me questions, tell me, Kristy, this didn't work, or I really loved how this worked. I want to hear from you. This is a community, and I want to start the conversation here.